If we're talking about British cooking, we've got to talk about British puds. And if we're talking about British puds, we've got to talk about the jam roly-poly, the pièce de résistance of the British cooking cuisine. A pudding that I love and is cherished from my childhood. Rich, inviting rolls of beautifully steamed sponge, layered in between stunning ribbons of jam. Serious comfort food and one of my favourites. Let's get it. First thing we're going to do is get ourselves a tray. I want to prep my oven before we start to make the dough. This is a steamed pudding, so we need water in and amongst the mix when we're cooking it. I've got a large roasting tin. I'm going to pour in a full kettle of water, bang that straight in the oven at 180 degrees, and then we're set. Next up, we want to get together the vessel that this steamed pudding is going to cook in. That takes a bit of tin foil down to the board and you roll it out. Now my tin foil is slightly small, so I'm gonna have to put a couple of layers together to make it my desired width. So I've got 2 sheets like this and then 1 sheet in the middle, overlapping to seal in all that beautiful goodness from that roly-poly and sort of create its own atmosphere while it's cooking. So once my tin foil is down, that's gonna be on the outside to protect that paper from burning and the heat of the oven. Then we get our grease-proof paper in the middle, so our jam roly-poly doesn't stick. And this is our cooking vessel, our cooking blanket, ready to wrap around that roly-poly and steam it perfectly in that hot oven. Now greaseproof paper is pretty non-stick, but just to make sure, we take a little bit of our butter down onto the paper and then use your hands and rub that across the entire surface area of the paper. So once that's properly greased, take that whole blanket and just stick it to one side. And now we're gonna make the dough. And for us, that story starts with beautiful rich butter and a good hit of self-raising flour. The reason we're using self-raising is because we want a slightly light jam roly-poly. We don't want it dense. We don't want a log of stodge. We want a pudding, a risen pudding. Next into this, we go a little bit of sugar. Now I know that jam has got sweetness, I know it's got the flavor that we want, but a little bit of sugar inside that dough helps carry the sweetness across and also helps with the caramelization. 2 tablespoons straight in. A little pinch of salt, just to offset all that sweetness. Then we go lid on and we pulse it up. That'll take about 20 seconds. Just till you get this beautiful sandy texture. Tip that all out and then we're going straight in with the suet. Now what is suet? It's shredded beef fat. And what does it bring? It brings richness, it brings depth of flavour, it brings that comforting hug that you get from all good proper British classic. Suet straight in. And what are we going to bind this all together with? Nothing other than a good glug of milk. Now I go in with a spoon at this stage and you're using the back of it to almost press and massage and knead all those stunning ingredients together. If you've got the kids involved, you can do this with your hands by all means. And once that's coming together to something like a recognisable dough, we go with a metal spoon, scrape off that wooden spoon, and there you have your dough ready to roll. Now we flour the bench generously. We don't want this sticking at all. So a good amount of flour onto that bench. Flour your hands, little flicker over the dough. We bring it together gently with our fingertips and then we're out onto the bench. First stage is I use my hands. Good bit of flour over the top and then we're pressing it down. We're sort of trying to manipulate this into that rectangle. So turn it over a couple of times, make sure there's loads of flour everywhere. That's when you go in with your rolling pin. So when we're rolling this, we want to just go back and forward. Then we turn it 90 degrees and we go back and forward. If you've got a bit of knobbly bit up the top, take that off, rip it apart and then fill in the gaps. Because this is such a versatile dough, you can manipulate it to how you want it to be. Now at this stage, give it a little lift. Make sure it's not sticking. Even pressure with the rolling pin and you end up with something like this. We're looking for a good sized rectangle. Then we take our jam. I've got store-bought jam. This is absolutely fine. Raspberry I've gone for. It could be strawberry. It could be plum. Use the jam that you feel like you want inside your roly-poly. Could it be marmalade? Yes. It can go any way you want with this, but pick a good jam. We get our spatula in there. And because mine's slightly set, I'm just gonna mix it up a bit. And that's gonna make it more pliable when I put it down onto the dough. And then we sort of lift this up and let it just cascade and drip down onto that pastry. And you can always add more, so don't go with a whole jar at the start. Once that jam's on there, we spread. And you want to get it all over that dough. Now, how much jam do you want on there? This is completely up to you. I go with about 250 grams, should be about 2/3 of a jar. Now, there's one thing you need to do, and that is on the closest edge towards you, get very, very close. So we've got right to the edge of that dough, and at this stage, I've got my secret weapon, my ruler. Now this could be your kid's ruler, make sure it's nice and clean. This could be a big palette knife if you have one, but I use a ruler. Slide it in at the bottom, and then you just fold over that first little bit. Slide it in again, and we fold over again. Now we've got a lovely little lip to fold the rest of that jam roly-poly over. And I will stress this to you. It's not a push, it's a lift and a roll. It's a lift and a roll to get that proud, iconic shape. Just give your bench a little wipe down. We're coming back with our lovely blanket. Then we trim the edges off the roly-poly. Now, we've got it on our little cooking blanket. It's greased, it's protected, it's not gonna stick. But one thing we don't wanna do right now is make this container, this environment too tight, so the jam roly-poly can't fulfill its maximum puff, its maximum rise. So in order to do that, you do a little tiny mini fold at each side, and then you bring these two sides up to the top and they meet in the middle, yeah? We fold over, crimp, fold over, and we crimp. It's completely airtight. Go to one side, and we crimp down. So now we've got this stunning little parcel, this beautiful little package filled with jam, sugar, flour, and love. There's a good amount of space inside that package. It's not too tight. So when the heat activates with that self-raising flour, that thing begins to rise, becomes beautiful and soft and sweet. All that's left to do now is get it onto a tray. Because of the size of this, I'm going diagonal, get it straight in the oven. Now this has come out of the oven, it's had a good hour. We're just gonna open it up very carefully. It will be slightly hot, so let it rest. Now you take your two fingers, you pinch either side, and then you just pull that top open. A bit like opening a crisp packet, and allow that beautiful steam to come out. So this is opened up, it's rested for about 5 minutes. Get yourself a sharp serrated knife, carve across that beautiful pillowy soft pudding. Pick it up, we place it into our bowl. And the last thing to get on there, custard. And that's the humble jam roly-poly, beautifully cooked. It's a classic for a reason. Delicious, warming, comforting, cheap as chips. Absolutely stunning to plate. That's my 101 to jam roly-poly. Thank you.